My beloved Madridistas, welcome back to Madrid. Welcome back to the channel. Okay, we're playing Talavera tonight in the round of 16 of the Copa del Rey. I'm only going to comment on that at the end of the video. This is a third division team. We should be able to beat them with our bench and Castilla players. So, I mean, it would be ridiculous to do a preview for this one. But we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. What I want to talk about today is what has dominated the media here in Spain all week. Okay, all week. Not just social media, but even the legacy media that's been trying to sort of hide this story deliberately. They can't help it anymore. This story completely blew up again. It's all over the press, starting with Laporta's testifying, then Florentino's speech, then a letter from the refs in Spain. The whole issue has blown up again, but I want to give you guys the story of the Negreira scandal because it's really important to understand how this started, how it progressed, and kind of where we are today. This is the biggest scandal in sports history, and I think it's important that we sort of know the facts and how this happened. Okay, thanks for joining me. Let me tell you about the greatest scandal in sports history. Let's get started. Welcome back. Okay, let me tell you guys the story of the whole Negreira scandal. And by the way, when my channel was very, very young, a couple of years ago, I did a video about this. And that video actually includes footage of some of the crazy calls, about 10 minutes worth of raw footage. It was demonetized. It actually has not just the statistics I'm about to show you guys, but also has footage of some of the crazy calls. But let's go to the beginning. So all of this started in the year 2004. Now, Laporta had been elected president of Barça, and there was that same year there was an election for the presidency of the Spanish Football Federation. Now, at the time, there was a sort of gentleman's agreement among all the clubs of the first division that they were all going to sort of re-elect the incumbent at the time. But in the sort of very last minute, Laporta kind of broke the agreement with the other clubs and proposed the presidency of Villar, who ended up winning. Now, this happened sort of very last minute. Barça kind of spoke to the other clubs and used their influence, etc. But they got it over the line and they managed to get Villar elected as president of the federation. Now, this is in 2004. Now, three things happened right immediately after the election of Villar that got the ball rolling with all of this. The first thing that they did was that they elected as vice president of the federation Joan Gaspar. Now, Gaspar is synonymous with Barça. He was president of Barça. I remember his presidency. So that's the first thing they did. Now, the second thing that they did, and this is where you begin to see where this is going. The second change that they made is that before they would select refs for matches on a totally random basis. So it was literally taking a name out of a hat, what ref would do what match. They changed it and they turned it into a designated pre-selection process where they would pre-select the refs for specific matches. Now, why would you change that rule? That is the first sign of things to come. They changed the way that you select refs for matches. It used to be random. From 2004 on, they're pre-selected and predetermined. And the third thing that happened in 2004 is that the payments began to Negreira. Now, Negreira was the number 2 in the ref organization, the Comité Técnico de Árbitros, but he was the one that really, operationally speaking, had all the power. He was the guy that elected, he would, if you're a ref in Spain and you got demoted or promoted, that depended on Negreira. He could decide whether you would go into the second division next year or if you would be promoted to play in the Champions League and you get to travel around Europe, make more money and stay in nice hotels and all that kind of stuff. So Negreira was the key person and the only person you really needed to control, and he could then exert his influence over the rest of the refs. So the payments began in 2004. Now, math is the only thing in the universe that doesn't lie, okay? Math is the only thing that is irrefutable in the universe, and I am a big believer in the objectivity of math. But one of the most annoying arguments that I hear, even from YouTubers that I really like and follow that are Barça YouTubers, like Eddie 92 or Manquer. Like, these are nice guys. They're the more moderate end of the Barca YouTube spectrum. But, you know, even they say, well, and it's the most annoying argument I ever hear. Well, you can't really prove that it influenced the refs. Actually, yes, you can. Okay, yes, you can, because the numbers show you that that is the case. So let's look at what did, for example, red cards for and against look like in the period prior to 2004. If we look at a sample of red cards for and against, for example, of the 15 years prior to 2004, it looks like this. Okay, it's pretty much equal. There's a slightly different sort of for and against, but the net is what you would expect over such a long period of time. I mean, you can have distortions like on one specific year, but the longer the sample size is, I mean, in statistics, the bigger the sample size, the more credible, the more confidence you can have in its interpretations and conclusions. Now, we're not talking about 1 year or maybe something crazy happened. We're talking about 15 years. And over those 15 years prior to 2004, the numbers were kind of similar. I mean, you know, which is what you would expect. Now, what happens to, say, red cards for and against? So while you're playing your rivals, the red cards that you receive and the red cards that your rivals receive. Now, what happens when you start paying millions to the most important head of refs in Spain? This is what happens. And I'm going to put my timer here because I know this is about 30 seconds. But look at what happens. Okay? All of a sudden, you start to get this massive divergence. The divergence begins. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, and then it really seems to accelerate once you get into the sort of 16, 17, 18. Like, it really accelerates. Now, that is not normal, and of course, Real Madrid's net, we call it saldo arbitral in Spanish, sort of the net referee decisions. Now, that's red cards, but what happens if we include penalties? So red cards for and against and penalties for and against the 15 years after the payments were made. Okay, this is what the numbers look like. Okay, and this is a study done by a journalist. I think his name is Maquetolari or something like that. But he ran all the data, and this was sort of he did it I think in 2020 or something like that. So this is covering the 15 years immediately after the payment started. Now there's a 68-point difference. Okay, and you're talking about a league where the league is decided some years on 1 point, 2 points, 3 points, and you don't think that 68 red cards and penalties more in your favor are not going to make a difference? Of course. Now, this is the smoking gun. We know that they made the payments because Barca's admitted it, but if you want evidence of whether that had an influence, it's in the data. It's in the data, and the data, like I say, does not lie, and we're talking about 15 years. So now, let's fast forward. A few years ago, about 3-4 years ago, the Spanish fiscal authorities conducted an audit of Mr. Negreira. This is just a typical audit, and they found in some of his companies like millions of dollars that were unaccounted for. So, of course, he had no alternative but to say where it came from, and he said it came from Barca, and Barca admitted to making the payments. Now, the first excuse that they gave was that these were written reports about refs that they were paying for. And Laporta had a press conference with these, it was the most ridiculous thing anyone's ever seen, with boxes on stage that we all know are empty. There are no written reports in there. Trying to BS the media that they had this sort of archive of reports. So when they realized that people were going to ask to see copies of the reports, then they said, well, actually they weren't written. They were oral reports. So verbal reports. But then the problem is that when Luis Enrique, the managers and sort of staff of Barca and players, like when they're questioned, none of them had ever heard or seen of any of these reports. So you're spending millions on reports that none of your managers or players had ever heard of. A little bit suspicious. So at this point, you can tell that something is very, very wrong. Now, the next media spin on the part of Laporta was, well, we were doing it to secure fairness in ref decisions. So wait a minute. What do you mean fairness? The stats, the net sort of for and against statistics, the saldo arbitral was even, it was balanced before the payments, and it became completely distorted after the payments. So how can you say that you were paying the refs for them to be fair when they obviously gave you a much bigger advantage? Again, an argument that doesn't make any sense at all. Now, the reason that all of this blew up this week is that Laporta started the week, he testified. And little by little, they started releasing clips and the testimony, etc. And the guy's lying through his teeth. So Laporta says, under oath, which I don't know how he has the balls to do this, that he never met Negreira ever, never met him personally. And then, of course, they leak videos of him saying hello in public, it's ridiculous. He claims, listen to this one, that he didn't even know that Negreira was the vice president of the Comité Técnico de Árbitros. So I am to believe that you are the president of Barça and you have no idea who is in charge of the referees in Spain. It's totally insane. Now, this was followed by Florentino Perez, the management team at Real Madrid and the board of directors, etc., they have a kind of a Christmas party every year, and Florentino gives a little speech. And in that speech, Florentino was very outspoken about Real Madrid's concern over corruption in this league and the referee and everything that's happened. And the immediate reaction, this is how deep the level of corruption gets. Immediately after Florentino gave his speech, the Association of Refs in Spain put out a written statement condemning Real Madrid for saying what we said. So we're just trying to put a spotlight on what's happening, and we're calling for transparency, but somehow we are the criminals because we want truth and we want openness and transparency. So then, of course, at this point, Laporta then went out to the media and made more comments, and the mainstream media kind of went ballistic. But look, at this point, I can tell you that even the legacy media that Barça, because they've been known to pay journalists over the years, this is very known and documented, that even the legacy media, which they have so much influence over, even they can't take it anymore. Like, they have to talk about it, and their arguments are getting more and more ridiculous. So Barça receives all this money, gives all this money to the refs. The statistics go crazy, and then when they try to give a justification for what they were paying for, they have absolutely nothing. So so where we are now is that the media that has been trying to hide it has no choice but to discuss it because it's just gotten too big. Social media is all over this. That's all the YouTubers that I follow here, like Real Madrid, Barça, whatever, that's all they're talking about. And the process is slow, which is very, very frustrating because I would like to see some justice be done here. I think in other countries, teams that have tried similar things have been punished and relegated, etc. So far, Barça has paid zero price for bribing refs for 20 plus years, because it still feels odd to me what's happening today. But the facts of the matter are, look, it's a slow process and we'll have to see where it goes. But if you're a lawyer or a judge, right now, the facts are that Barça made the payments. They claim something about some dubious reports that nobody can find. And we know that the statistics in terms of calls went galactically in their favor immediately after the payments. Look, they don't really have a lot to hang their hat on, I have to say. And so I think this is why, Camp Barça is they're sort of getting crazy these days. They're kind of reacting. And this is why you're seeing such a backlash and all this, because they can feel the pressure and they don't have an excuse for what happened. So the whole thing is heating up, but we're going to have to wait and see how this ongoing process goes. I mean, it's a very slow process in Spain, but at the end of the day, the facts are the facts. And I don't know, I would love to see this at least some sort of penalty against Barça. But anyway, that is the story of what really happened, and you guys need to be aware of it, because I would notice over the years that something was wrong with the calls. I knew intuitively something was wrong. And like I say, watch there's a link in the description of the original video I did. You can see some of the footage of some of these calls. it's insane, completely insane. And I knew something was wrong during the course of all these years, but we couldn't put our finger on it. But now we have the smoking gun and we know what happened. Okay, well, there you go. That's the story. We'll see how it ends. Okay, in terms of the Talavera match tonight, look, not too much I'm going to say. I'll definitely give you guys a hot take immediately after the match. I'll give you my immediate reaction after watching it. This is a third division side. Like I say, we should be able to beat them with our bench. This is a great day for the sort of Mastantuonos and Brahims of the world and the Enriques and some of the Castilla players to showcase themselves, Joan Martinez or whatever. But this is a third division side. We need to win, and if we don't, we've got serious problems. But I will give you guys my sort of, if you guys remember a few years ago, we lost against Alcorcon, and it was a giant scandal, and it really put a dent in the morale of the team. So, you don't want to lose a match like tonight, but there's absolutely no reason that we shouldn't, trample all over them. So, we have to treat the match with kind of what it is. But I will give you guys my hot take later, just after the match. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Love you guys, and as always, a Madrid.